My daughter said I should stop dreaming. Then she watched me open the store. She wanted the ribbon fell in 2 clean pieces when the scissors closed. Red satin, the kind my late wife would have chosen, drifted to the sidewalk while a small crowd applauded. I stood in front of the glass doors with my name painted in gold above them, and I felt my daughter's eyes on my back like 2 small stones. She was standing near the edge of the gathering, arms crossed, face arranged into something she probably hoped looked like polite interest. But I knew that posture. I had watched it harden over years, through disappointments she never examined and failures she never owned. She thought I could not see her. She was wrong. The boutique opened at 10 that morning. By noon, we had made our first sale. By evening, the register had recorded 17 transactions, and I stood alone in the back room among tissue paper and garment bags, listening to the silence that follows a day that changes everything. I was 63 years old. I had spent 4 decades in logistics, managing warehouses and shipping schedules, and the quiet mathematics of moving goods from one place to another. And now I owned a women's boutique on a corner lot in a town where my daughter had once told me, to my face, that people like us do not get to chase dreams. I want to tell you how I got here. Not because I need your sympathy, but because I think there is something in this story that might be useful to someone else. A lesson about patience, maybe. Or about paying attention to the things people show you when they think you are not watching. My wife passed 6 years ago. Cancer, the kind that moves fast and takes everything with it. Eleanor was the dreamer between us. She had notebooks filled with sketches of storefronts, fabric swatches taped to pages, business plans written in her careful handwriting. She wanted to open a boutique, not a large one, just a small shop where women could find beautiful things at fair prices, where the fitting rooms had good lighting, and the staff remembered your name. She talked about it the way some people talk about places they have visited in dreams. Vivid, certain, and yet somehow always in the future tense. I encouraged her. I did. But there was always a reason to wait. The children were young. Then the children were in school and activities cost money. Then the children were in college. Then the children were out of college, but the economy was uncertain. And did it really make sense to take a risk now? Eleanor agreed, each time. She was practical that way. The notebooks went into a box, and the box went into the closet, and the years went into the past. When she got sick, I found those notebooks while looking for something else. I sat on the bedroom floor and read every page. Her handwriting had changed over the decades, becoming smaller and more compressed, but the dream remained the same. The final entry was dated 8 years before her diagnosis. She had written a single line at the bottom of an otherwise blank page. Maybe next spring. I never showed her what I found. By then, she was too tired for regret, and I did not want to give her another weight to carry. After she passed, I put the box in my own closet. I thought I was preserving her memory. I did not yet understand that I was inheriting her unfinished business. My daughter, Catherine, was 34 when Eleanor died. She had her mother's coloring and her father's stubbornness, though she would have denied the second part. She worked in marketing for a firm downtown, a job she described as fine in the tone people use when they mean the opposite. She had a husband named Derek, who sold medical equipment and a house in the suburbs with a yard they never used. About 2 years after the funeral, Catherine announced that she was going to open her own business, a boutique, women's clothing and accessories. Something curated, she said, using a word that had recently become fashionable. She wanted to call it Kate's Closet. I sat across from her at dinner and listened to her plan. She had a location in mind, a space in a new shopping center near the highway. She had spoken to a designer about the interior. She had already ordered business cards. What she did not have, I noticed, was a budget, a supplier list, or any experience in retail. I asked her about these things. Gently, I thought. She heard criticism. "You never supported Mom's dream either," she said, "and now you want to do the same thing to me." I remember setting down my fork. I remember the way the restaurant noise seemed to recede, the way her words landed in the center of my chest and stayed there. "Your mother and I made those decisions together," I said, "every single time." "Sure you did." She changed the subject. We finished dinner. I drove home alone and sat in the garage for 20 minutes before going inside, running my hands over the steering wheel and thinking about all the ways a sentence can be a weapon. Catherine opened her boutique 8 months later. She had borrowed money from Derek's parents, a detail I learned secondhand. The store was sleek and modern, all white walls and chrome fixtures. The prices were high. The inventory was thin. She had hired 2 employees and given them matching uniforms that looked uncomfortable. I visited on opening day. I bought a scarf I did not need, wrote a check for an amount that made my accountant wince, and told her I was proud of her. She hugged me in that distracted way people do when they are already thinking about the next thing. The store lasted 14 months. The closure was not dramatic. There was no single catastrophe, no flood or fire or scandal. The business simply bled money until there was no money left to bleed. Catherine had not understood inventory management, had not anticipated seasonal fluctuations, had not realized that a beautiful store needs beautiful systems running beneath it. She blamed the location. She blamed the economy. She blamed her employees, whom she fired one by one as the losses mounted. She blamed Derek for not helping enough, and Derek's parents for creating pressure by wanting updates on their investment. She did not blame herself. This pattern had been present since childhood, and I had hoped she would outgrow it. She did not. After the store closed, Catherine fell into what she called a reassessment period. This meant she stopped working, stopped seeing friends, and spent most of her time in the house with the unused yard, ordering things online and returning them. Derek called me twice to ask if I knew how to help. I did not. What I did know was that something had shifted in me. Watching my daughter fail at her mother's dream had stirred the old notebooks in my mind. I found myself driving past vacant storefronts, noting locations and foot traffic. I started reading about retail trends, inventory software, supplier relationships. I took a weekend seminar on small business finance and sat in the back row, taking notes in a spiral notebook that reminded me of Eleanor's. I did not tell Catherine. I did not tell anyone. There was a night, 3 months after her store closed, when I could not sleep. I got up at 2 in the morning and made coffee I did not drink. I sat at the kitchen table with Eleanor's notebooks spread in front of me, reading by lamplight, feeling the texture of pages she had touched decades before. Her handwriting changed as the years passed. In the earliest entries, from when we were newlyweds, her letters were round and confident. She wrote about fabrics and colors with the excitement of someone who believed the future was infinitely malleable. By the middle period, when the children were small, the writing had tightened. More practical concerns appeared: budget estimates, competitor research, questions about zoning and permits. And by the end, in those final years before she stopped writing altogether, the letters had become cramped and uncertain. The dreams were still there, but they had grown quieter. Resigned. I traced one of her sketches with my finger. A storefront with an awning, a mannequin in the window wearing a dress she had described in careful detail. Navy blue, A-line, with subtle embroidery at the hem. She had even noted the price she would charge. It was low by today's standards, but appropriate for the time. That night, At that table, something crystallized in my mind. My daughter had tried to build her mother's dream without understanding what the dream actually was. She had seen the surface, the beautiful store, the elegant merchandise, the idea of being someone who owned something. She had not seen the years of study beneath it, the careful observation, the patience required to understand not just what you want to sell, but who you want to sell it to, and why they would choose you over anyone else. Catherine had inherited Eleanor's ambition, without inheriting her discipline. And I had allowed it, had watched the collapse without intervening, because part of me believed she needed to fail. Part of me believed that failure was the only teacher she would listen to. But failure had taught her nothing. Or rather, it had taught her only to blame others for her circumstances. She had learned that the world was unfair, that success was mostly luck, that her own choices were somehow not her own. I decided that night that I would try something different. I would not argue with her. I would not lecture. I would simply do what she had been unable to do and let the results speak for themselves. The careful work began. I spent 6 months learning before I spent $1 investing. I visited boutiques in other towns, not as a customer, but as a student. I watched what they did well and where they stumbled. I spoke with owners who were willing to share their wisdom and learned from those conversations more than I had learned from any seminar. I found a location in a small shopping district, about 20 minutes from Catherine's house. The space had been a yarn shop, then a bakery, then vacant for 2 years. It had good bones, as Eleanor would have said, wide windows that caught the afternoon light, a back room large enough for storage and a modest office, a landlord who was willing to negotiate because he was tired of the emptiness. I hired a contractor to do the build-out. I kept the original hardwood floors but refinished them. I painted the walls a soft gray that made the clothing stand out without overwhelming it. I installed lighting that flattered rather than exposed. Eleanor's notebooks guided me, even though some of her specific ideas had dated. The principle remained sound. Make the customer feel seen. The contractor, a man named Marcus, who had been building storefronts for 30 years, asked me once why I was doing this. We were standing in the empty space, surrounded by drop cloths and the smell of sawdust, and he gestured at the walls like they were asking the question too. "My wife wanted this," I said, "a long time ago. But she's not here now." "No, she's not." He nodded slowly, the way men do when they recognize something they cannot name. He finished the job 2 weeks ahead of schedule and charged me less than the estimate. Some gifts arrive without explanation. Supplier relationships took months to build. I started with regional makers, women who designed and produced their own lines in small batches. They were skeptical of me at first, this older man with no retail background, but I was honest about my ignorance and earnest in my desire to learn. Several of them became not just vendors, but advisors. They taught me about margins and markup, about the rhythm of seasons, about the difference between what people say they want and what they actually buy. One supplier, a woman named Rachel, who made hand-dyed scarves in a converted barn 2 counties over, asked me a question that I think about often. We were sitting in her studio, surrounded by skeins of silk in every color, and she said, "Why now? Why not 20 years ago, or 30? I told her about Eleanor. I told her about the notebooks and the years of postponement and the box in the closet. I told her about my daughter's failure and the things it had shown me about the nature of dreams deferred. Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Some seeds need a long winter before they can bloom." I have thought about that sentence more than any business advice I have ever received. I named the store Eleanor's. The name was a private memorial, though I never explained this to anyone who did not ask directly. When people inquired, I said it was my late wife's name, and that she had always wanted to open a boutique. Most people nodded and moved on. A few lingered on the sentiment. None of them understood the full weight of what those letters represented. I hired 2 employees. Both were women in their 50s who had worked in retail for years and had grown tired of corporate environments. They wanted to be part of something smaller and more personal. I paid them fairly, gave them genuine authority over their domains, and treated them as partners rather than subordinates. This approach, I learned, was rare enough to inspire loyalty. I did not advertise the store's opening to my family. I sent no announcements, made no calls. The soft opening happened on a Tuesday in March, and the only people present were my employees, the contractors who had finished the work, and a handful of curious neighbors. The formal opening, with the ribbon and the small crowd, came 3 weeks later. I did not invite Catherine. But word travels in families the way water travels through cracks. She called me the night before the grand opening. I was in the back room, steaming wrinkles out of new inventory, when my phone buzzed against the folding table. "Dad, I heard something strange today." I set the steamer down. "What did you hear?" "Someone told me you're opening a store, a clothing store. Is that true?" "It's a boutique," I said. "Women's clothing and accessories, yes." The silence that followed had weight. I could hear her breathing, the faint television noise in the background of her house, the small sounds that fill a life. "You never told me." "No," I said, "I didn't." "Why?" I thought about this question. I had asked it of myself many times over the preceding months. The answer had several layers, and I was not sure she was ready for all of them. "Because I needed to do this without distraction," I said finally, "and because I wasn't certain how you would receive the news." "How I would receive it?" "Dad, this is exactly what I tried to do. This is my idea." "It was your mother's idea," I said. The words came out quiet, but they filled the room. "Long before it was yours." More silence. Longer this time. "I want to come to the opening," she said. "The opening is at 10 tomorrow morning. You're welcome to attend." She hung up without saying goodbye. I finished steaming the inventory, locked the doors, and drove home through streets that seemed quieter than usual. She stood at the edge of the crowd when the ribbon fell. I saw her arrive, saw her position herself where she could watch without being watched. She did not applaud. She did not approach me afterward to offer congratulations. She simply observed, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. I let her observe. There is a kind of teaching that requires no words. The first month was harder than I had anticipated. I made mistakes. I ordered too much of one designer and not enough of another. I misjudged the local appetite for certain price points. I scheduled my employees inefficiently and found myself working 14-hour days to compensate. But I learned from each error. I adjusted. I asked my staff for feedback and actually listened when they gave it. There was a Tuesday in the 3rd week when I seriously considered whether I had made a terrible mistake. Sales had been slow for 4 consecutive days. A shipment had arrived damaged, and the supplier was being difficult about a replacement. One of my employees had called in sick, leaving me alone on the floor during what should have been our afternoon rush. I stood behind the register at 5 in the evening, watching the empty street through the window, and I felt something close to despair. The mathematics of retail are unforgiving. Every day without sufficient sales is a day closer to failure. I thought about Catherine's store, about how quickly the money had drained away, about the look on her face when she finally admitted it was over. Then a woman walked in. She was perhaps my age, dressed simply, and she moved through the store with the focused attention of someone who knows exactly what she wants. She examined 3 dresses, tried on 2, and bought 1. She also bought a scarf and a pair of earrings from a local artisan I had taken a chance on. At the register, she paused before signing the credit card receipt. "This is a lovely store," she said. "My friend told me about it. She said the owner was an older gentleman who actually listens when you talk to him." "I try," I said. "That's rare these days. Most places you're just a transaction. Here, I felt like a person." She left, and I stood there holding the receipt, understanding something I had known intellectually but not felt until that moment. The business was not about the numbers. The numbers were just a way of keeping score. The business was about the woman who walked in feeling ordinary and walked out feeling seen. That night, I went home and read Eleanor's notebooks again. I found a passage I had overlooked before, buried in an entry from when our children were small. She had written, "A good store is not a place where people buy things. It is a place where people remember who they wanted to be." I copied that sentence onto an index card and taped it to the wall above my desk in the back room. It is still there today. Catherine came into the store 3 times during that month. Each visit was brief, silent, and ended without purchase. She walked the floor, touched the merchandise, and left. I greeted her each time and did not press for conversation. Some doors must be opened from the other side. The 4th visit was different. It was a Saturday afternoon, our busiest time. The store was moderately full, perhaps 8 customers browsing and 2 more at the register. Catherine entered and stood near the entrance for several minutes, watching. Then she walked to the back, where the dresses hung in neat rows sorted by size and color. I excused myself from a conversation and approached her. "Can I help you find something?" She did not look at me. Her fingers moved along the fabric of a blue linen dress, feeling the weight and texture. "This is nice," she said. "This whole place, it's really nice." "Thank you. I don't understand how you did it." Now she looked at me. Her eyes were red at the edges. "I had everything planned. I had a team, I had money, and it still fell apart. You did this alone, and it's working." I considered my response carefully. The truth was complicated, and I was not sure she wanted to hear all of it. But I had learned over a long life that half-truths corrode more than they protect. "You had a vision," I said, "but you didn't have a process. You wanted to skip from idea to success without walking through the middle." "And you didn't?" "I spent 6 months learning before I signed a lease. I visited 30 stores. I read your mother's notebooks until I could recite them from memory. I made 100 small decisions before I made a single large one." She released the dress. It swayed gently on its hanger. "Mom's notebooks?" "Yes. They were in a box in my closet. I found them after she passed. She had been planning this since before you were born, Catherine. Every detail, every dream." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would it have changed anything? You had already decided that I was the obstacle, that I was the one who stopped her. You needed someone to blame for your own disappointment. I was convenient." Her jaw tightened. I watched her struggle with the impulse to argue, to deflect, to find fault anywhere but within herself. It was a struggle I had witnessed many times, but something was different now. Something had cracked. "I blamed you for a lot of things," she said quietly. "Some of them weren't fair." "No, they weren't. I'm sorry." 2 words. They hung in the air between us, fragile and genuine. "I accept your apology," I said, "and I want you to know something. This store is not a rebuke. It's not revenge. It's a promise I made to your mother that I didn't know I was making until it was almost too late." She nodded. I could see her. Processing, fitting new information into old frameworks, feeling the frameworks bend. "Can I help?" she asked. Not as an employee or anything. Just, I don't know. Help. I thought about the daughter I had raised, the woman she had become, and the space between those two people. I thought about Eleanor's notebooks, and the words she had written at the bottom of that final page. Maybe. "Come back next Saturday," I said. "We'll talk about inventory management. You might find it useful." She came back. And the Saturday after that, and the one after that. I did not make her an employee. I did not give her authority or responsibility. What I gave her was education, the slow and patient kind that builds understanding from the ground up. I showed her how to read sales data, how to anticipate demand, how to build relationships with suppliers. I showed her the mistakes I had made and how I had corrected them. I showed her your mother's notebooks, page by page, and watched her face as she recognized the handwriting. The first time I handed her a sales report, she glanced at it and said, "So we sold a lot of dresses this week." "Look again," I said. "What else do you see?" She looked. I waited. This kind of teaching requires silence, the willingness to let someone struggle toward their own understanding rather than simply handing them the answer. "The scarves," she said finally. "We sold more scarves on Tuesday and Wednesday than any other day." "Why do you think that is?" She considered. I could see her mind working, fitting pieces together. "Weather? It was cold those days." "Partly. What else?" "I don't know. Rachel, our scarf supplier, came in on Monday to restock. She arranged them in a new display, put the brighter colors at eye level. Tuesday and Wednesday, people saw them differently." Catherine was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "So it's not just about having good products, it's about how people experience them." That's what your mother understood. That's what her notebooks are really about. Not inventory or pricing. Attention. The way a space can guide someone's eye, shape their mood, make them feel something before they even know they're feeling it. She cried the first time she saw Eleanor's sketches. I stood beside her and did not speak. Some griefs must be witnessed, not managed. The week after that, Catherine asked if she could shadow Rachel during a delivery. I called Rachel, who agreed. My daughter spent 4 hours in a converted barn, learning about dye lots and fiber content and the way certain colors sell better in certain seasons. She came back with questions I could not answer, which pleased me more than I let her see. The learning continued. Each Saturday brought new lessons, new revelations, new moments where I watched my daughter become someone she had not been before. She began to understand that failure is not a verdict, but a data point, something to be studied and learned from rather than blamed on, external forces. One evening, after the store had closed and we were tallying receipts, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "I think I know why my store failed." I set down my pen. "Tell me." "I was selling what I wanted to sell, not what people wanted to buy. I never asked. I never even thought to ask. I just assumed that because I had good taste, everyone would see what I saw." She paused. "That's really arrogant, isn't it?" "It's human," I said. "We all do it in different ways." "But you didn't. You spent months learning before you opened. You talked to people. You listened." "I had advantages you didn't. Time, resources, your mother's notebooks, and I had watched you fail, which taught me things I couldn't have learned any other way." She looked at me with an expression I had not seen on her face since she was a child, before the disappointments calcified into defenses. "I'm sorry I blamed you," she said. "For everything." "I know." "How do you do that? How do you forgive someone who was unfair to you for so long?" I thought about her question. It deserved a careful answer. "Because holding on to anger doesn't change the past," I said. "It only poisons the future. And because I watched your mother carry resentments for years about her own parents, about opportunities she missed, and I saw what it cost her, I decided a long time ago that I wouldn't make the same choice. Catherine nodded slowly. I could tell she was filing this away, adding it to the collection of things she was learning to understand. The store has been open for 2 years now. We are profitable, modestly so, which is the best kind of profit for a business this size. I have expanded the staff to 4 and reduced my own hours to something approaching reasonable. My back appreciates the shorter days. Catherine has started her own project. Not a boutique, but a consulting service for women who want to open small retail businesses. She helps them avoid the mistakes she made, which means she had to first understand what those mistakes were. This understanding did not come easily. It required humility, which is a muscle that atrophies without use. She called me last month to tell me she had signed her first client. "I wanted you to know," she said, "and I wanted to say thank you." For what? For not gloating. For teaching me instead of telling me what I did wrong. For giving me a second chance to learn from Mom's dream. I was standing in the back room when she called, surrounded by new inventory from a designer in Vermont. The boxes smelled like cedar and possibility. "Your mother believed in second chances," I said. "She believed people could grow even when they made it hard for themselves. I try to believe the same." There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, Catherine." We said goodbye, and I returned to unpacking. The work was repetitive and required attention. The kind of task that occupies the hands and frees the mind. I thought about Eleanor, about the years we had spent postponing her dream, about the way delay can feel like prudence until it becomes regret. I thought about my daughter, the girl who had blamed everyone for her failures, and the woman who was learning to look inward instead. I thought about the strange mathematics of inheritance, how we pass down not just genes and money, but also unfinished business, unspoken hopes, unlived lives. The store is quiet now. Evening light slants through the windows, turning the merchandise golden. In an hour, I will lock the doors and drive home to a house that is too large for one person, but filled with memories that make the space feel smaller. On my desk, in a frame I bought on our anniversary many years ago, is a photograph of Eleanor. She is young in the picture, younger than Catherine is now, and she is laughing at something outside the frame. I do not remember what made her laugh, but I remember the sound, the way it filled whatever room she was in. Above the photograph, mounted on the wall, is the first dollar the store ever earned. Next to it is a page from Eleanor's notebook, the one with "Maybe next spring" written at the bottom. I had it professionally framed, acid-free and UV protected. The spring came late, I know, but it came. And my daughter watched it bloom, standing at the edge of the garden she had tried to plant in the wrong season, finally understanding that some seeds need longer to grow. That is the story. Not a story of revenge, though it might look that way from certain angles. Not a story of triumph, though the numbers on the ledger suggest otherwise. It is a story about patience, about inheritance, about the difference between wanting something and being willing to earn it. I am 65 now. The store will continue as long as I am able to tend it, and perhaps longer if Catherine decides she wants to carry it forward. That choice is hers. I have learned not to make decisions for my children, even when I think I know better. Especially then. What I know, what I carry with me every morning when I unlock the doors, and every evening when I turn off the lights, is this. The dreams we defer do not disappear. They wait. They watch. And if we are lucky, if we pay attention, they give us one more chance to make them real. Eleanor never saw the store with her own eyes, but I believe in whatever way matters that she sees it now. The gold letters above the door, the soft gray walls, the customers who leave feeling a little better than when they arrived. I believe she sees our daughter, standing at the counter on Saturday mornings, learning the things she should have learned years ago. I believe she sees me, an old man in a young dream, still trying to get it right. And I believe, because I must, that she is proud. The ribbon fell in 2 clean pieces. The scissors closed. The store opened. And somewhere, in a place I cannot reach, but sometime since, Eleanor smiled,